The Dice Tower is made possible by listeners like you. Thank you for your support. This episode is sponsored by TheOp, also known as USAopoly.
The Dice Tower, episode 737, Doldrums.
Welcome to The Dice Tower, a podcast about board games and card games, and especially the people who play them.
In today's show, Mandi and I try to kick it into gear with some good game chat, and the pie of the show is games we only play with expansions. I'm Suzanne Sheldon.
And I'm Andy Hutchinson.
And folks, I'm going to be real honest with you. Like, even to get that intro line, that took a few takes. It's going to be one of those shows. I'm just warning you up front.
That's okay. People seem to like it especially when I go off the rails, and it might be that kind of episode, everybody.
So, folks, welcome back to the podcast. It's nice to have you here. It's been a couple of weeks, obviously. It was great to hear about, the retreat and things like that last episode. I apologize up front. Yeah, I missed posting the holiday food poll. It's been a couple of weeks. I've been pretty sick and pretty laid up, so apologies on that. We'll run the episode title poll for holiday recipes this time, I promise. We'll get this one up.
Well, I did have some people message me about the macaroni pie that I was talking about. And
that macaroni and cheese atrocity?
It's good. The way that we make it is delicious.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the one with raisins. Never mind.
Oh, okay. Whoa. No. That's a whole...
My apologies.
That's a whole... If you put raisins in your macaroni pie or mac and cheese, we need to have a conversation.
Yeah.
You are not invited to the cookout, okay? I'm just kidding. But if you are interested in the recipe, I know I had a couple people reach out. Let me know, because it's in my head, but I'm going to write it out. So if people want it, then I can pass that along. So maybe after we do the next poll, I can share that on the...
you should drop it into the... If you're willing to share it on the board,
Absolutely.
You should do that. That'd be great.
Absolutely.
Awesome. And just as a reminder, folks, registrations for Dice Tower West and Dice Tower East are open, so you can check those out. I'm pretty sure East still has spots, but I know West is filling up, and they're talking about all the great guests and all the fun that they're going to be having at that convention in Las Vegas, so you can sign up for that.
Is it in Las Vegas? Why do I always forget that? All of a sudden, I had the urge, Viva Las Vegas! Viva! Okay, I'll stop now.
Such a classic.
What can I say?
So we're going to just jump on in to some games we've been playing, because that's what the show's all about, folks. Games.
Games, and more games.
Mandy.
Yeah.
You want to just jump into it?
Let's do it. Let's give her.
So, what have you been playing lately?
Well, Mandy, I'm just going to cut the line since I'm all jazzed to talk about some games. And as promised, last episode, I gave you a choice of 2 games I would talk about, and you picked Sequoia.
Yes.
But the back half of that deal is that I would talk about the other game this episode. So here we are.
So you're leading us, directing us into this new game here.
Into GPS. Nice.
I know. That was pretty good.
GPS is designed by Hartmut Komarel, and the illustrations are by Anka Gavril and Daniel Profiri, which is similar to all 3 of these, because GPS is the third in that little smaller box line from BoardGameTables.com, along with Mountain Goats and Sequoia, both of which we've talked about in the show already. So GPS is actually a update of an older game called Finito.
Oh.
And Finito was more like it almost looked like bingo, where you had a big placard with numbers on it and tokens that you would put on it and that kind of thing. And cool. So here comes BoardGameTables.com trying to zhuzh it up a little bit with GPS. So now what you're going to get in this small box is every player is going to get a bunch of different satellite tokens, and they have numbers on them. I think it's 1 through 12. And then there is a central circle or dial that is actually a spinner. So you're going to get this black plastic piece, and you jam in these cardboard things. So it looks like a rocket ship with smoke coming out the back of it, and you can spin it, and it's going to point to different spots on the dial or on the circle. You're going to have all these tokens in front of you face down. You're going to flip a few over, and then the rocket's going to get spun, and then players get to choose one of their face-up face-up satellites to put in the zone that the rocket is pointing to. You're going to flip over another token, the dial's going to spin again, and then you choose another satellite to put out there, and you keep on going. Once all of your satellites are face up and out around this big circle, then as the rocket spins, you are going to start moving satellites from one location to another. Because ultimately, the way that you win GPS is you have to be the first player that gets your satellites in sequential order around that circle. So it's like you're shuffling up your satellites in front of face down and you flip them up and then, you have the 4, 7, and 10. Okay, well, the dial is pointing kind of, halfway down, so maybe you want to put the 7 down there and try to get in that zone. But you're dealing with the randomness of that, so different players will have different values out at different times in different locations. And then it's all about making smart choices and manipulating where your satellites are going to be moved to be the first to accomplish that sequential order thing. It's really, really simple, and I wasn't sure how it would play out because it sounded so simple, but in practice, the gameplay is actually really fun. It's again, it fits in this family that BoardGameTables.com is seemingly to do with this line of quick, easy to teach, but just a nice extra layer of fun that really makes them worth playing. So you do find that you're trying to mitigate placement. You're trying to plan ahead. You're trying to make the best smart choices after you get them all out to move them around. And you're watching what other people are doing. And I really enjoy playing it conceptually. So here's my issue with GPS.
Oh.
It's the circle and the spinner. Unfortunately, the weight of the rocket cardboard pieces and this black central spinner, the weight of the cardboard is so heavy that it makes the spinner very difficult to spin. Mm-hmm. So you find that you have to hold things down and try to get a good spin on the spinner so that it actually keeps on going around a little bit. But then because you're spinning it so hard, the circle's jerking around. So if you don't have the satellites, if you have the satellites too close to the circle, then we find we're knocking those satellites, which are fairly small cardboard pieces. You're knocking them around, which is deadly in this game because the other thing that's challenging is that with the spinner, it's really imprecise. Where is this spinner pointing on this circle? Is it on the line? Is it on the gaps? Where are you putting your satellites? Is that in between? That kind of thing. So the spacing element of being around the circle we found to be awkward as well and slightly frustrating even. Whereas Finito is just like a bingo board where you have tiles and numerals in sequential order, right? You don't have to have any guessing about where you're putting your piece. You know exactly where it's going. It's less pretty and it's got no theme, but it was very straightforward and very clear. So with the awkwardness of the spinner and its motion on top of kind of the awkwardness of the spatial element, where really there doesn't need to be a spatial element. It's not about the space and the gaps that you're creating. It's about the order. That created a layer of frustration that we just felt wasn't necessary in a game this light and this simple. Now, I went on Board Game Geek, and sure enough, this is a common enough thing that there's posts about it on Board Game Geek's listing for the game. And somebody did find a solution. They're like, hey, just go get this really small single ball bearing and pop it between the layers of the spinner and whoosh. And there's a video of it. And I'm like, okay, maybe that would solve one of my major issues with this game to make it easy to play. But then you watch this person spin this thing. Sure, it made it spin like a whirling dervish. Great. But now you watch this, the guy spins it, and then it spins and spins and spins and then starts to slow down and starts to slow down. So it's almost like it made it too spinny. So it took one problem and swung it all the way over to the other end of the spectrum to fix it, which creates a different kind of challenge. I don't know. I might give it a try because I actually do really enjoy GPS a lot from a mechanical point of view. It's really a component frustration that held this one back a little bit more for me compared to the other in the line. But the gameplay itself is solid, And if you think you can deal with the ball bearing issue, or if you don't think that the spinner issues that I kind of outlined would feel the same for you, it probably is worth checking out.
Do you think this is one they would revamp or redesign that element, or like?
I don't know. I doubt it. I mean, it's been published at this point. I don't know if they're going to reprint it or anything. I have no idea what their print run status is or anything like that. So I suspect it is what it is, and either you want to play the game or you don't.
All right, well, that's fair. Well, moving from GPS to, well, nothing to do with GPS at all. It's about flowers. So,
Smooth.
Yeah, I know. I'm back on track with my regular transitions. What can I say? All right, so I'm going to be talking about a game that is about flowers, and that is called Floriferous. I hope I said that right. I feel like that sounds, it's hard to get off the tongue. Floriferous. Like,
But it's such a pretty word.
Splendiferous. Yeah, okay, it works. I like it. It's designed by Eduardo Baraf and Steve Finn. Art is by Clementine Campardou, and it's published by Funkoverse Games. It plays 1 to 4 players, plays in about 20 to 30 minutes, and I believe it is on pre-order in Canada for about $24 Canadian. So if after this you like it, well, you might not be able to get it right away. So Floriferous, it's pretty straightforward, as I was saying before. Small box type game. It's played over 3 days, which are basically divided into 5 turns, depending on player count. And in each turn, you're moving your player piece through a garden. So you've got 2 rows of cards, right above stacked above each other, so top and bottom, and I think it's 5 per row. And then on top of that, you have some objective cards that are listed out. There are 3 of those. And then you have some other cards that are on the bottom that are in line with the columns. And I think they're called desire cards. So the cards that are kind of in the middle of the tableau are going to be your flowers. And then they have different symbols on there that you can use for set collection points and that sort of thing toward the objectives at the top. And then desire cards are other types of scoring that you can do at the end of the game. So when you move your token onto a column, one of the cards in the column, you can choose one of the flower cards, or you can choose one of the desire cards on the bottom. Objectives just stay there. And if you meet that, you can always just put a piece on that in addition to your turn. This was very fun to play with my mom because she liked to describe each of the flowers as we moved on to them. This is the Latin name for XYZ. Got a little explanation. So that goes to tell you the art was very nice, something to discuss. So after you move forward, that's kind of 1 day and you get to the end of that, and you go back the other way. So you don't reset and come back to the beginning. You just actually start your piece on the end, coming back the other way with a new set of cards, and then you go forward one more time, and that's going to be your last day of the game. And then you just add up all the points collected. There's even a card, I believe, for the person who gets most stones, because there are some stones kind of strategically placed on some of the cards, depending on player count, and collecting those gets you points, and then it also gets you a card. Whoever has the most of these stones gets additional points, and you just add up your points at the end of the game. Like, it's really straightforward. So as I said before, I played this with Mumsy, and she liked it a lot.
Aww.
She did. She liked to sit there.
That doesn't surprise me.
And it's flowers. Like, it's so pretty. Well, let me tell you about this flower, and starts telling me about its Latin roots, and I'm like, wow, no, she's into this game. So, I mean, I did appreciate that. She found it easy to understand, and she was interested in the actual theme of the game itself. I would say it's the same level maybe as Herbaceous, and I know we've talked about Herbaceous on this show before. Sure. It's not the same game. I mean, the set collection element is probably the most similar thing, and then they have that card having the most of something gets you additional points, because I think they had something similar in Herbaceous, but they are different games, and theming of game is different as well. So definitely, if you're worried about having 2 games that are the same, they're not. They're different enough that you could have both in your collection. The artwork, as I mentioned before, is really nice. It's really pretty. And I think Beth Sobel did the art in Herbaceous, but I think this one here, this is a different. So this is Clementine Campardou who did art of this one, and is equally as lovely. And as a lot of Funkoverse games, I didn't play it, but there is a solo mode in this game.
Right.
But these are the types of games that I don't mind playing solo. So they usually have the same person who does the solo modes, and they're usually really well done. And I like games where I don't have to use a dummy player. Like, I can just kind of play against a score. Like, okay, if you get in this range, you're awesome, or this range, you can do better next time. I'm all about that. I like those types of solo games, and these do them really well. This is a light game. If you're going in like, oh, I want something heavy, crunchy, it's not going to be that. Don't get me wrong. There are ways that you have to make those hard decisions, right? Like maybe taking this card, but then you're leaving something open for somebody else to take. And depending on where you are in the top or bottom will determine your turn order as well, right? They may go before you and get the card that you need. So making those important decisions are definitely something that happens in this game. But it is light at the end of the day, but still has some of that thinkiness that you want. So Floriferous for me, I enjoyed it. I definitely played again. I definitely like the rule set is simple, so I can definitely play it with my other, and I have to say, like I say non-gaming, but just maybe not hardcore gamers like you and I maybe, and they would still totally be into it. So Floriferous for me was a win, and definitely should give it a good look.
I'm really looking forward to getting this to the table. It looks so pretty, and Mandy, nowadays I'm good. I'm into a relaxing game, a game that doesn't stress me out too much, and a game that brings me some peace at the table. Exactly. I'm excited for this one.
Nothing wrong with that.
Next up for me, Yokohama Duel.
Ooh.
This is by Hisashi Hayashi with illustrations by Ryo Naomo, and it's published by TheOp.games. Now, this was picked up and kickstarted by Tasty Minstrel Games, which is now essentially defunct as a publisher. And I've played both versions, but I personally own the Akazu brand version, so that's the one I'm really going to be speaking to. But you should be aware that the components are very, very different in some ways between the two games. And in fact, my friend who has the deluxe edition brought it over and we compared them, and it was comical because Yokohama Duel from Akazu Games, the Japanese publisher, is in a box that's like 6 inches wide and 8 inches tall, and it's maybe 1.5 inches, 2 inches thick. It's a very compact box. Mm-hmm. Whereas, of course, Yokohama Duel Deluxe is a typical larger bookshelf style box. That's, and when you put the two side by side, the size difference was hilarious because there's no gameplay differences between them.
Huh, that's interesting.
Which was really, really fascinating to see. But of course, component-wise, the deluxe edition comes with wood bits. It comes with a board that the regular game doesn't come with and things like that. So there are component reasons for that too. Yokohama Duel, as you might suspect, is a 2-player game set in this Yokohama universe. So there's Yokohama, which is a very large Euro-style game. And then there's Yokohama Duel, and then there's the Yokohama Roll and Write, which I actually just realized, Mandy, I don't think I've talked about on the show, so maybe I'll do that next episode.
I would love to hear about that one.
Yeah, the Yokohama Roll and Write is, spoiler alert, pretty fun. But we're here to talk about Duel. It's a 2-player version of Yokohama, which I'm always a little leery to say it's like the 2-player version of Yokohama because it's really a different game, but with a lot of overlapping elements or things that will feel reminiscent. So, for example, aesthetically, there's very similar things to Yokohama in terms of the placards that you use, definitely in terms of the iconography, the resources like fish and bricks and tea, all very similar to Yokohama, the big game.
Right.
I really want to talk about Yokohama Duel as a game on its own, not in comparison necessarily to Yokohama for what it's worth. So Yokohama Duel is a worker placement game in which, and this is going to sound so standard, Mandy, you're going to be gathering resources to complete orders.
Okay.
That's really what you're doing. You got to deliver like 2 tea and a brick. Well, get 2 tea and a brick and fulfill the order and get points. Huzzah. You're done. That's the whole game. You're going to play 4 rounds of this, and there's essentially 4 turns per player per round. And then whoever has managed to get the most points through completing orders or various other actions or cards that you can get will win the game. Right. I mean, so straightforward. Well, let's talk about some of the things that make it a little more interesting than that, because it's Hisashi Hayashi, and Mr. Hayashi is not going to do something so straightforward.
Oh, for sure.
First of all, the workers have strength values. Okay. So in Yokohama Duel, the version I have, they're actually cards. And they'll show like an illustration of like a flexed arm, like strength or power. And so you're going to get 4 cards. And one's power 1, 2, 3, or 4. And those are your workers. And sure enough, the strength of the worker that you use will determine the effect of the worker placement spot that you get.
Oh.
So if you use a level 3 worker at the plantation, you're going to get 3 tea. But if you only use a level 1 worker, you're only going to get 1 tea, right? That kind of thing. And it is worker placement so that places are blocked. So once it's used, it's used. So it's not like you can say, oh, I'll get 1 tea now and later I'll get 3 more this turn. Oh, this round. No. That's not how that works at all. Another huge twist here is you must play your lowest value worker first.
Right.
So your weakest worker, who is going to reap you the fewest benefits of any individual spot, is the one you have to place first. And as workers are going out, you are blocking locations, meaning you can't take them with a stronger action later. That creates an incredible amount of interesting tension as you are making a choice of, I really need a lot of fish, but I know Mandi wants some fish too. So do I take a weaker fish now and block Mandi from the stronger fish, but then I have to take another turn next round to get the fish I need or come up with a different way to do it? Or do I take the risk of waiting and assume that Mandi's going to do something else so I can swoop in with a stronger worker to get more fish on my next turn?
Right.
That worker strength combined with the must play the lowest value first is a hugely compelling mechanism in this game. You are also able to build up and trade resources to put trading houses or shops onto the various locations, which strengthens them for you. So if you get a shop, you can add strength. So if I have a shop in the plantation and I play my power 1 worker, but I have a shop there too, now that worker acts like it's a power 2. Like the shop adds strength.
Okay.
So there's an interesting strategy there as you're looking at your orders and thinking about what overall strategy you have for the game and where you want to invest in getting those buildings. And I like that element as well. There's also chapels and gear cards, or technology cards, I guess I should say. And chapel cards are pretty much a straight point exchange. Exchange a bunch of money or resources, I can't recall off the top of my head. And these cards have a lot of points on them. And then there are also a technology shop where you can place your workers and generate gears, and then you can get cards that give you special abilities and powers that you can use throughout the game, tech cards that you can use throughout the game, which are really important in the game as well. So there's actually, for a fairly straightforward game, there's a nice amount of things going on. I don't want to say there's a lot going on. For example, I've been trying a game called Bitoku, which we haven't talked about yet on the podcast.
I need to play it.
You go to a game like Bitoku and there's so much going on. There's so many spaces and so many options and so many choices and so much stuff on the board. It's a lot.
Right.
Whereas in Yokohama Duel, there is a nice amount going on. So you're looking at the different worker placement spots, which are mainly about getting resources. Then you have the things that you can work for in your orders. You have the chapels you can aim for, or you can try to craft your strategy around gear cards. There's a mechanism that allows you to strengthen your workers, which is cool. So all of a sudden your 1 can become a 2. But wait a minute. Do you want your 1 to become a 2, or do you want your 3 to become a 4? Like, as you're looking at how the board spaces are powered and what values are really important there, is it better to have 2 super strong cards and 1 weak card, or to have 4 good cards? That kind of decision is in there as well. Without the relationship to Yokohama, I would have loved this game.
Oh.
With the relationship to Yokohama, I still love the game, but then it forces your brain to compare it to the big game, right?
Right.
So Yokohama Duel, if you have 2 players and you like worker placement with some interesting resource management and some nice little twists to the worker placement and the choices that you get to make there, I really actually highly recommend Yokohama Duel. If you are looking for a 2-player version of Yokohama, I'm going to say,
Oh, really? Interesting.
And that's not a criticism of the game. This just has less going on than the big game of Yokohama. And that's fine by me. But I think that if you really want that massive, longer, more intensive Euro-style game with 2 players, then just play Yokohama together. If you want something a little bit lighter, but with still compelling choices and some interesting twists, then Yokohama Duel. And if you're mostly playing with 2 players, get Duel. That kind of thing. So I loved Yokohama Duel, that worker placement strength, the way that you can level them up, the order that you have to put them in, the choices between the wide variety of technology cards that can really help you craft an engine and a strategy to propel you through the game. Everything works for me. I don't know what the future of the game is in terms of the deluxe edition or US or North American licensing, but if you get the chance to at least try this game, I highly recommend it. Yokohama Duel.
Yeah, that's definitely one that's been on the list. I think that's the one that was on Kickstarter, you were saying, right?
Yeah.
And I had seen it, and I think I was probably spending way too much on Kickstarter at the time, but...
What? You? No.
Never. Pshaw. But that was definitely one that was on the list, so I'm glad that you talked about it. And now I can consider maybe which version I want to get, knowing that they are the same gameplay, but maybe, for the shelf space.
They're not the same. That's the thing. So, Mandy, for you, especially because you don't get as many 2-player games in.
Yeah, probably not.
I would get Yokohama.
So I have Yokohama. Yokohama I own.
Oh, well, okay.
I just thought I might need
to. If you think you can get a 2-player game to the table, you should get it as well. Yeah.
Oh, definitely. I think I can wrangle someone to play with me. We'll see.
I bet.
Oh, goodness. Well, moving from Yokohama Duel, actually, we're going to do a different type of duel in this game, sort of. Funkoverse Game of Thrones. So I have spoken about Funkoverse, I believe, on the podcast. It might have been a long time ago, but I just recently got the Game of Thrones ones to the table, which is a newer one for me. And this is designed by Prospero Hall, and it's published by Funkogames. There is no artist listed on BGG. It's 2 to 4 players, and it plays in about 20 to 60 minutes. And I believe it retails for about $38 Canadian. So this is one of those games where you can play 2 people, but you're controlling 2 characters each, or 2 against 2 versus 2, and then each person has their own character that they can control. And in the game, it's pretty straightforward. You've got a map, and each team is kind of starting on one side of the map. So each side has their own kind of area you start in, and you're basically trying to battle with the other side too, depending on the scenario that you choose, picking up crystals or diamonds on the board, and whoever has the X amount will kind of win the game. There's a starter kind of tutorial game, which is a bit different. It's a matter of just knocking people down and getting them kicked out of the game, and if you do that so many times, you can win, but it does change based on the scenario. So if you really like that strategy, even possible tactical play, this might be a game for you. It's fun in the fact that you get to mix up your characters. So I just played Game of Thrones, but I have a whole bunch of them. So you could play Rick and Morty in Game of Thrones setting.
Right.
Or Golden Girls, with, I think I did play Rick and Morty with Golden Girls. That was very interesting. And Rose Nyland had the pie in her hand as her weapon. It was very fun. Each character has a listing of abilities that they can use. And obviously, if you can work with a character that's part of the same world, I think they kind of play off of each other a little bit better. And you also have, I guess in a video game, you call them like NPCs. Like they're there, they hang out. And
right.
They can kind of help you. But yeah, so some characters have those additional things too, in addition to weapons or special abilities. So it kind of reminds me of a video game, but like in a board game where you have that strategy and it's like pew pew, but you're not really pew pewing on the board. You're just kind of like, hey, let me knock you over. And your abilities are not always usable. You have tokens which monitor that. So if you've used an ability, there's a cooldown track. So it'll give you a number, let's say 3. So you use this ability, and then the marker that you use to pay for said ability goes on the cooldown track of 3. So then you have to wait 3 rounds before you can get that token back. So it's not like you can just, go gangbusters and just use your ability all the time, every time. You have to be strategic in when you're using it. So all in all, I actually really liked this game. I didn't think, I was like, oh, it's cute because it has little pop figurines and stuff. And I thought, okay, that's cute. And I didn't think I was going to like the game, but I actually really like it. Now, I do prefer playing it with 4. I don't like games.
Interesting.
I don't like games where I have to control multiple characters. It's like,
fair.
I want to focus on the one, get down the strategies for the one, understand the abilities. For me, I just find if my focus is split between the two, I'm not giving it as my full thought, So I feel like I prefer it with 4, but it does play well with 2. I like the fact in this game they do kind of like a very quick start. So it literally, I think there's like a few pages that tells you, okay, you set up, and then it literally says, stop reading, play the game. So I like that because then people can just jump in and get a feel for it. Now, it's not the like real game. It just kind of guides you through a little bit of a basic game with just a slightly different objective. But now you have a really good idea of how the game plays. So for me, I really appreciated that. I know I've talked to some people about it's open communication. So, I mean, you can like whisper in people's ears about what you're going to do. But yeah, like you're at the table talking about it, and that might not be for everybody. Because then you can kind of hear what people are strategizing and whatnot. So that might be a turnoff for some people. I mean, I guess for me, I'm not particularly good at these games anyway. So for me, it really doesn't matter. But I still have fun. Although I did win. Not my last game, but the one before. That was actually great because they saw it coming. Oh, I'm sorry. I digress. I never win, so I have to celebrate these small victories. But overall, it's a good game. And I definitely think you could play it with like a younger age set, because I did lend the Marvel version to a friend and he had played it with his sons, and he said no, they really liked it and they understood and grasped the rules fairly quickly. So if you haven't tried it, I would definitely try one of the Funkoverse games, and they have a variety of characters for you to choose from, and you can mix and match. So Funkoverse Game of Thrones is what I played, and well, I am a big fan of Game of Thrones, so I definitely had to have it.
It makes sense. Yeah, it's one of the really nice things. In fact, I was just talking about this online a little bit ago, how a licensed IP that you enjoy can be great for a game, because I have Labyrinth, which is a game that I've enjoyed for years and years and years, but my kids never really had any interest in it. And then Ravensburger released Pokemon Labyrinth.
Oh.
And now all of a sudden my 9-year-old is like, what?
What's that?
Pokemon Labyrinth? And is super into it because it just helps him connect to the game in a familiar way, and he enjoys the art, and it just opens it up to him. And I love that. And so something like a Game of Thrones, yeah, I totally see you playing Game of Thrones, Cersei or whatever, thrown down with your dragons. And yeah,
I think I played.
I'm glad you liked it.
Who did I play? I don't even remember now. There was like, they had it's like, this is what happens when you don't watch shows for a long time. But like the Snow King guy, the bad guy with the icy blue eyes, he's a character. Jon Snow, of course. Daenerys. Yeah, people who watch the show.
Yeah, never seen an episode. So yeah,
okay, so this means absolutely nothing. Okay.
All right, and to wrap up games that we've been playing, Silencio.
Oh, was that for me?
Silencio, Mandy. No, that's the name of the game. I'm not telling you to be quiet.
Like, where's this going?
Silencio is designed by Cesar Gomez Bernardino, and the illustrations are from Sebastian Cavot. And this one is coming to you from TheOp.games. Oh. Now, it was actually previously published under the name Eureka under 2D10, I believe, which is kind of an indie publishing shop. But Silencio is, I think TheOp picked it up and updated it thematically and artistically and put it out. Silencio is a cooperative game in which your goal is to get all of the cards played to the table in ascending order without talking.
Oh.
Which sounds like the game.
I was just about to say, like, that sounds familiar.
Or sounds like the mind.
Yep.
And yeah, for sure, there are similarities here. So in Silencio, you have a deck of cards that come in what are essentially 4 different suits. I don't know if there's a theme to it, but it's like red, blue, yellow, and green are the primary colors of them. And it's kind of set in this magical fantasy world. So the art is very vibrant and has lots of wispy things and kind of mystical creatures. And like the red looks like it's in a lava pit, and the blue looks like it's in an ice cavern and things like that. So it's actually very, very pretty art, very vibrant and very lovely. And the cards have 2 halves, the same numbers on the card on either side. It's, 2 and 2. But one side has a white number and one side has a dark number. And the art on either half of the card darkens a little on the dark side and is brighter and more vibrant on the light side, so that you can really tell the difference between the light side of a card and a dark side of the card. And so those are going to get shuffled up and dealt out. And each 4 of those suits basically gets a row. And it's led off by the 1, which is like the shrine, which can give you a special ability that you can use once during the game. And your goal is just to get all the cards out from low to high before the end of the game. Or you play for points and try to cooperatively get the most points you can, just like the game where, chances of you actually getting it all done, it can be tough. But they've got a little point sheet in there that you're trying to do.
Yeah.
You get to pass the cards, so you get shuffled up, dealt out. You actually get to pass a few cards, which is always interesting in a game. Passing cards can be really interesting. And then you just take turns playing your card. Now, you pick a card from your hand and you place it in the appropriate row. If the card is immediately sequential to the card before it, you have to flip it so that the dark side is up and you actually pay a penalty.
Oh.
So Mandy, if the 2's already out there and then you play a 3, you're actually going to put the dark side of the 3 up and then the red, let's say in the red suit, and take whatever penalty the red suit has for that.
Got it.
Then if I come after you and you've just played the 3 and I play the 7, well, it's higher. It always has to ascend, so it's higher. That's good. But it's not sequential. Then I play it with the light side up and I get the bonus of the suit. Keep on going around the table that way. So it's really about managing this tableau collectively and figuring out when to play cards, how to manage the bonuses and the penalties, because ultimately to get all the cards out, you're going to have to get them in sequence sooner or later, right?
Right.
And the penalties and bonuses play off of each other a lot. There are penalties that negate the bonuses, that kind of thing. There are bonuses that say, okay, you can move cards in order, you can switch cards, you can trade cards, all that. So there's tableau manipulation and hand manipulation within those as well. And each player, one of the nice things they include is a little player aid that you can put in front of you that reminds you of what all these powers are. Yeah, I mean, that's the game. You keep on going until everybody has to pass and you can't legally play, in which case you lose and you count points, or if you manage to get them all out, which is challenging. It's especially challenging if you play the higher player count at a 4-player count. It's a little bit easier if you play at 2 players, but it's challenging no matter what.
Right.
The art is, as previously mentioned, very vibrant and rich, but it also forms a panorama when you get them laid out all in order, which is really, really fun and cool. I like little details like that in a card game. I think it makes it a little extra sparkly and fun.
Exactly.
If you like this kind of game, Silencio is pretty fun. It was an interesting thing to learn it from the rule book, though, because it was definitely one of these games that as you're reading the rule book, it's just not clicking with you how it's going to work. It definitely took, we read the rule book and then we had to play some of the game for all to click and be like, oh, this is how this works.
Right.
This is why that matters. We didn't necessarily, it's one of those games, I would say, that you don't see the spark just by reading the rules.
Okay.
It's once you get it on the table, then you start to feel the interaction and the tension, and you start to realize, just like with the mind, it's like, well, how do you play the mind? Like, I don't, okay, where's the fun in this? But then once you get at the table and you feel that table stress and that kind of energy within the group that's playing, that the game really starts to bubble and pop. And I felt that way about Silencio too. Once it got on the table and you start to see how the bonuses and the penalties worked with each other, and also a lot of like intense eye contact between players as you're trying to somehow mentally communicate.
Stare them
I'm
down.
playing this card because it's my only choice, or I'm playing this card because I'm trying to set you up because I know what I passed you. That kind of thing.
Right.
There's definitely some fun energy in that as well. So it doesn't, quote unquote, replace the mind or replace the game. No. It's harder to teach.
Right.
That's for sure.
Okay.
But is it a solid entry in kind of this apparently growing niche of games in which you play cards cooperatively and can't talk to each other? Yeah, it's a really solid entry. I'm glad I picked it up out of Europe. I'm glad I have it. I'm keeping it, and I'm having a lot of fun with it. So that is Silencio.
There was a missed opportunity there when you said something about bubbling. I thought you were going to say snap, crackle, pop. That would have been amazing.
But okay, I don't get that at all. I guess you and I should not play Silencio together because we are clearly not vibing today.
I must be hungry or something, because all of a sudden Rice Krispies came on the scene as soon as you started talking about this game, just bubbled and did the things. Anyway, it sounds delightful, and I'm looking forward to trying it and just imagining the chaos of us playing this together.
Well, yeah, and us being able to be silent during a game together is probably highly unlikely. Well, hey, Mandy, if you're hungry, then I guess that means it's time to serve up some pie.
Absolutely. Yum, yum. Brought to you by TheOp.games, also known as USAopoly. Today's featured game is Hues and Cues. Recent Dice Tower Party Game of the Year winner, Hues and Cues, is a must-add to your shelf. To play, pick a color, give a clue, and everyone guesses a color on the board. Available now at TheOp.games or your local game store today. Exclusive for Dice Tower listeners, 10% off your entire purchase at TheOp.games. Use promo code DICETOWER. This is available for all games, puzzles, and accessories for U.S. residents only.
Order up!
And now, it's time to order up a slice of game pie.
Oh boy, this game pie, I literally feel like this is where I had, the big dinner. And yes, I'm one of those people, when I go to a restaurant, I'm feeling a little full, I unbutton the top button of my jeans. Yeah, that's right. I'm that kind
of
girl. No
judgment. You can tell that you just haven't graduated to my level of seniority in the world, Mandy, because I just next level it.
Oh.
Get rid of all that unbuttoning nonsense. Elastic waistbands, girlfriend.
You know what? Lululemon's here. I just got to wear those.
There you go.
So the reason why I say that, because we need to let the stomach expand, make room for this pie. And, well, look at that. We're talking about games with expansion. So not my pants, but games. So there was a point to all of that. And
glad we got there.
We got there. The first one that tops my list here is Marvel Champions. So living card games, yeah, this is kind of easy to kind of insert in this type of list, but I think I can say safely that I am not the only one with an obsession here, because Suzanne plays it, Ashley the Shark plays it.
Why are you calling me out on the podcast?
Oh,
Jeez
no.
Louise.
I have to bring you all with me, otherwise people are going to think I have a problem. So I really enjoyed this game. At first, I didn't think it was going to be one, because I'm not into deck builders so much, you know what I mean? But I really like this one. Now, I haven't taken part in the custom deck building. I think, Suzanne, maybe you have. I know Ashley has.
Just a teeny tiny bit.
A little bit, right? Curating those decks, and definitely I've heard some positive things. I mean, yeah, I gotta, as soon as a new deck is out, or, a new box set is out, I gotta snag it and try it out. But I'm really enjoying it, and even playing with the stuff that I do have, and I'm looking forward to curating more of these decks. So Marvel Champions for me is a win. From what Ashley's told me, it's great solo. So, and I think
I played solo all the time. I love it.
Right. So if you're a solo player, this might be one that interests you. So Marvel Champions, 2 thumbs up. Yeah.
Great choice, and definitely one of those situations where adding more expansions does mix up your experience.
Absolutely.
And that's what we love about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
First up for me, and actually, good point about the living card game thing. I thought about putting things like Star Realms and Hero Realms in here, things that, but ultimately I kind of wanted to veer away from that and focus a little more on board games.
Right.
And games that, I just will always play with the expansion at this point.
Yeah.
So first up for me is Res Arcana. This is a Tom Lehman game.
Good one.
That came out a few years ago, and it's one of those games where you get some cards and you're taking actions and you're gathering resources to fulfill placards and get points and that kind of thing. It's a good game. I really liked Res Arcana when I got taught it at a convention, bought it, and have enjoyed it. But it was one of those games that just felt me like I was just wanting a teeny tiny bit more. Well, thankfully they come out with an expansion that offered new places of power and new mages and new monuments and new items and demons and scrolls and all sorts of good stuff. And you know what? Boom, there you go. That added the richness and the kind of extra level of choice within the game itself that I was looking for to level it up. And so Res Arcana is one of those ones. I just mixed it all together. I have no need to take it apart again. I really like the game, and I think the expansion really flushed it out for me. It's not a situation where you play Res Arcana and you're like, I'm like, ugh, they're missing something.
Right.
Not that situation. It's more like you had a really great pie, and then here comes the whipped cream.
Yes. Oh, I like that. And I have played Res Arcana. I have not played with the expansions, and I still liked it without. So that's really exciting to hear that it just amps it up. So that whipped cream sounds delicious. Well, next one on my list is, well, I think it's what a lot of people know, and it's Clank. So you're like, well, Clank's not an expansion. It's not, but it does have several. So one that I've enjoyed, I believe it's called The Mummy's Curse. And in that one, they add a die and another figure that's, of course, there to injure you and make sure you don't get out alive. But that's the point of the game, right? And I mean, they have multiple others, and I have a few that I still haven't played yet. But I do like that it slightly adjusts the gameplay. So it's the same game, but then there's just a few little things to kind of either make it a little bit more challenging, or just adds a touch more to the game. And I like that versus maybe, so I find some expansions like it kind of totally changes the game, and you don't necessarily need that to happen to make it interesting. And Clank has several iterations, right? Like we've played the campaign version, and that was amazing. And then they even had add-ons to that, with which I've played as well. And I thought that was very interesting and changed up the gameplay just a smidge, just based on the characters that you're choosing and with some of their abilities. So Clank for me, I mean, I love the game, and I just love those little splashes of fun with the expansions.
Yeah, Clank is such a fun game. Well, this next one, I don't know if it's too much of a gimme, but one thing I like to remind myself of, Mandy, is people are joining the hobby every day.
Yeah.
And that's the wonderful thing about this time period that we're in, is more and more people are discovering the wonderful world of board games. So something that's old hat to us can still feel fresh and new to a lot of folks, including a lot of folks who are listening to this podcast right now, who maybe just discovered board games a couple of years ago or a couple of months ago. So I try not to get too mired in the, oh, everybody knows this, so why bother to talk about it?
Yeah.
Because next up for me, Lords of Waterdeep. Lords of Waterdeep, one of those games that I think is considered kind of a modern classic within the niche, right, within the hobby, like super hobbyist, right? Oh, yeah, everybody knows Lords of Waterdeep, right? For a worker placement game set in the D&D realm. Great. Well, solid worker placement game, had a lot of fun with Lords of Waterdeep, but then here comes Scoundrels of Skullport, the expansion that just added so much in terms of deepening and adding some complexity to the game that leveled it up, certainly for an experienced player. I mean, I would maybe say for new players, just go with the base game, right?
Right.
But for me, personally, if I'm going to play Lords of Waterdeep, I will always prefer to play it with the Scoundrels of Skullport expansion forever.
Yeah, and it's funny, I never believe people when they said, I'm like, oh, I'm sure it's fine. And then I'm like, yeah, totally get it. If you are new, like you were saying, it's great. You don't need it. But once you've had it and you want to just add that little extra, you will always play with it. You're 100% right. Another game that I quite enjoy with expansion, and keep in mind, I don't play a lot of expansions. So if I get an expansion,
you really
in there,
don't. Yeah.
Yeah, like it's good. Like I'm happy to at least try them. And these are some ones I've tried and liked. Potion Explosion. So Potion Explosion had a couple. They had one that added an additional player, and then they had one that added an additional ingredient. So just gave you more abilities that you could do with a specific ingredient or potion that you can use in the game. So in essence, it's the same game. You just have a little bit more to work with. And that's okay, because the types of people that I would play this with, they were happy just to get that little bump, and it wasn't completely changing the game. And Potion Explosion for me is a funny one, right? Because you can play it. It started off, I think, as like a video or phone kind of app game, and then it's like the board game, and then, you're still playing it on the app. So for me, I love this game all around in any form, and it always is a welcome one to the table. So Potion Explosion, I think it's called the fifth ingredient, and then they have, like I said, the additional for the extra player.
And I almost made my list, but I saw that you put it there, so I backed away. Good choice.
Yes.
Villagers. I love Villagers. It's a really fun card drafting and tableau building game in which you get to build this little engine because villagers will stack on top of each other and have prerequisites. So if you want to play a carpenter, you have to play a lumberjack first, and in order to play the beekeeper or whatever like that. And they have special powers, and the art is great. And it's a game I love to advocate for because I've just really enjoyed it. And when I first played it ages ago, it was one of those like surprise games. I didn't know what I was getting into. I actually backed it because I liked it aesthetically.
Right.
And then boom, here's a game that's become a perma shelf game for me, right?
Right.
Well, recently they kickstarted an expansion called Shifting Seasons. And love it. Just love what it brings to the game. Now, I do have a preview copy, so this isn't quite on shelves yet, and so caveat there. But I did get a little preview version that I've been able to explore and play with, and it's, again, I will not want to play Villagers without it. And in point of fact, unlike Lords of Waterdeep, where I'm like, start newbies maybe on the basic game.
Right.
Nope. Mix it all in, just have it all mixed in and play it from there, because I think that what it adds in terms of extra little events, but also how you manage the rounds of play that you get, improves the game. It wasn't a bad game. I love the game as is, but what they really looked at the game and looked at ways to improve it, especially at the higher player counts, and they did a phenomenal job. I will also say, if you are a solo player, Villagers has a solo mode that was quite challenging.
Okay.
They added a different solo mode to the expansion that's easy to manage and maintain. And it's not that it makes it super easy, like you're going to win 90% of the time, but I find it more enjoyable to play, flat out, as a solo mode compared to the previous ones. So Shifting Seasons to me is a must-have expansion for Villagers, which is one of my favorite games. So there you go.
Yeah, this is one. I think you've taught this game to me, the base game. I have not yet played the expansion, and I quite enjoyed it. So definitely looking forward to that one. Well, the last on my list, and I'm sure people have heard me talk about this one, is Viticulture. And I'm specifically, this is kind of tricky because I'm talking about the newest edition, which includes elements of the expansion Tuscany. And it's funny, I had only played Viticulture with those added pieces in the expansion. And so when I played Viticulture on its own afterward, I didn't realize how much of it was the expansion that I really enjoyed. So for me, Viticulture in a game on its own is fine, but with the expansion or the bits from Tuscany, fantastic. And I know there are other expansions as well, but I've mostly played with the Tuscany edition. I know there's a separate board as well in the older version, but now they've kind of put it into one. In the latest.
Oh, and like the master edition or whatever.
Right,
like that.
Exactly. So you don't get that board anymore. It's kind of all incorporated into the game. And it's really fun. So I really like it. So it's not Viticulture, Tuscany's the expansion. It's kind of all together now. So Viticulture's a good one. If you haven't tried it, you should definitely give that a whirl.
And to wrap up this Games with Expansion pie, Century. I mean, Century is such an interesting game series in general, just conceptually in terms of having Century Spice Road, but also Century Golem Edition. How uncommon is it for you to release essentially the same game with just totally different settings, but it's the same game?
Right.
I think that's interesting. And then Century was interesting in terms of it's a series. It's a 3-game series. I actually got to play just like a paper prototype of it ages and ages and ages ago. And I loved it on paper. I love the game when it was just black and white on paper.
Yeah.
Right. So of course, then they have this beautiful, lovely production from Plan B Games, and it just levels it up from an experience point of view there. But Century Spice Road or Century Golem Edition, pretty straightforward game. Enjoyable. I like the resource exchange. Maybe in the family of Splendor it can get compared to and things like that. Fair enough. And then they come out with Eastern Wonders.
Yes.
Which has tiles and a map, and you're doing ships, and there's different locations you can go to, and then you're managing a player board now as well, and you've got little building components that you're doing. Solid game. I really liked Eastern Wonders. For me personally, I like Century Spice Road, but I've played so many games, I will typically prefer something with maybe a little more complexity.
Sure.
But Mandy, Century, you can combine.
Yes.
You can combine these games,
So
which
good.
is a cool idea if it's done well. I think there's a lot of risk when you do something like this that you can kind of fumble it.
Yes.
How do you make an individual game stand on its own, but then combine those two individual games to create something that's more than the sum of its parts?
Right.
And I'll tell you, Century Spice Road and Century Eastern Wonders is absolutely my preferred way to play this game.
Oh, interesting.
Combining them. The card play of Century Spice Road combined with the board play of Century Eastern Wonders works together beautifully for me.
Fantastic.
And I love the extra complexity and richness that it brings to each other, and it just fires off for me. So if I'm going to play the Century line, I would always prefer to play Spice Road and Eastern Wonders together for my personal taste.
Right.
Solid games on their own, but better together. And that's why Century is my last slice of game pie this show.
Very cool. I don't know why I thought of peanut butter and jelly. When you said that, like they go together, like peanut butter and jelly.
I'll take it. I think we're hungry. I think we're
I
definitely
must be.
hungry.
I'm on a food kick. I don't know what's happening.
And we knew going into this episode it was going to be a little bit of a weird one. Thanks, folks, for sticking with us today. So there you have it, folks. Game Pie, games that we like to play with expansions.
Yeah.
Let us know on the Guild, in the episode thread, or on social media, or an email, some of the games that you like to play only with expansions. It's always fun to see that kind of thing because Mandy and I don't make a huge effort to play with expansions.
Right.
And so I could use the tips.
Yeah.
Because I'm open to it.
Direct us so we can filter out those really good ones.
And of course, you can also send us any questions that you have as you're emailing us about your games with expansions or your comments about Mandy's macaroni pie recipe. You can reach me at Suzanne@dicetower.com.
Yes, and before I give out my email, I wanted to say I'm almost caught up. And if I've missed you, I know I've read a couple. Thank you for the kind words about Suzanne and I and you enjoying the podcast. We appreciate you and we appreciate you listening. So thank you for that. But if you want to send us more delightful stories or games or any kind of tidbits or heck, just, say a quick hello, you can reach me at Mandy, that's Mandy with an I, at dicetower.com.
Are you fishing for compliments, man?
I don't know what you're talking about.
You look lovely today, and your smile lightens up the whole Skype call.
Oh, fantastic.
And truly, as Mandy said, we really appreciate your messages and your notes and you being part of our extended gaming family. It's a pleasure and a privilege to be here with you every episode, one that we really don't take for granted and we enjoy so much. So thank you for that. Next episode, 738, Tom and Eric are talking about games that were ahead of their time. And Mandy, I'm really excited for this one because I love that topic. Because I can think about a few games where maybe the wrong game at the right time or the right game at the wrong time.
Oh, yeah.
I'm really interested to see what games fall onto their list for this one. But until next time, I'm Suzanne Sheldon.
And I'm Mandy Hutchinson.
And you've been listening to The Dice Tower.
Thanks for listening. Promotional consideration has been provided by game publishers in the form of review copies of games. This podcast is sponsored by listeners like you. Thank you for your continued support. And speaking of support, the Jack Vassell Memorial Fund is an organization dedicated to helping gamers in need. Learn more about the fund's mission and how you can help at jackvassell.org. The Dice Tower is produced by Tom, Suzanne, Mandy, and Eric with assistance from Roy Canaday and Rob Searing. Our theme is composed by Timothy Pinkham and arranged by Matt Bellier. Let us know what you think of the show by posting to the Dice Tower Guild at BoardGameGeek.com, following the Dice Tower on Twitter, or by emailing us at podcast@dicetower.com. And don't forget to visit the other shows in the Dice Tower Network at dicetowernetwork.com. Until next time, from all the gang at the Dice Tower, have fun gaming. Hello, everybody. It's that time again for Two Truths and a Lie, and I'm going to reveal mine from last episode. Here we go. I like the graphic novel series Goldie Vance, Twisted Dark, and Why the Last Man. If you said Why the Last Man was a lie, you would be correct because, spoiler, I haven't read them yet. So that was a bit of a cheat, but it is what it is.
Still counts. Still counts, but I get where you're coming from. Good. Goldie Vance is so good.
So good.
Last episode, I said, I've seen every episode of Bob's Burgers, I've seen every episode of Futurama, and I've seen every episode of Rick and Morty. And the lie is that I've seen every episode of Rick and Morty. In point of fact, I think I've seen maybe one episode of Rick and Morty.
I'm there with you, actually, so not surprising. So there you go, we're on the same page. All right, well, new for this episode, here we go. I've had eyelash extensions, I'm going to PAX Unplugged, and I have been mountain climbing. I'm all over the place in this one.
Yeah, that was total cornucopia.
Super random.
And new for me this episode, I said I have a Snapchat account, I have a 9gag account, and I have a TikTok account.
Oh boy, you've got your work cut out for you, everyone. Good luck.